I'm very humbled and privileged to be the patron of the Lismore Soup Kitchen. It's never really been explicable to me why a Melbourne boy is the patron of the Lismore Soup Kitchen. Until now. The brilliant red Melbourne bricks, they were always there, waiting to be discovered. I'm glad you love something from Melbourne. Anyway, to be inspired, as we all have been this afternoon, is to really go deeper into what this is about. Let me talk about snapback, I won't be back, build back better, and no turning back. Snapback most recently was a phrase our former Prime Minister Scott Morrison was using. You might remember when the economy was closed with the pandemic and there were long queues of people who once were in work out the door at employment centres and were looking at really dark times. He kept saying, "Look, don't worry, the economy's strong and it's going to snap back and it's all going to be fine." Didn't quite work out like that. And if you read the Fault Lines report yesterday about the pandemic and the close down and how it was the poor most hurt, we know that the snapback wasn't there, certainly for many who died because of COVID. We lost a lot of people still. And we know that snapback is still working itself through the economy and through kids who missed a year of schooling, our state, the most locked down place in the world, and through mental health and through a whole range of things. The trauma is ongoing, which is absolutely the case, as you know, still here in Lismore. This ability just to say the rain stopped, we've snapped back, is not quite true. It certainly reminds me here in Lismore of me and World Vision and lots of others responding to the Boxing Day tsunami. We raised at World Vision $110 million in 6 weeks because of the devastation. 300,000 people died with that tsunami. And there was a lot of public pressure to say, we've given you money, it's got to be spent, do it in 3 months, get on with it. And we found it much more complex. Much more complex because many people, and we had the money and the skills to build back, dotting the country, 7 countries were affected, but they were mainly fishing villages and towns on the coast. These people were deeply, deeply traumatised. And the idea of just rebuilding immediately fast to satisfy our donors that the money had been spent, when they hadn't yet decided, could they trust the sea ever again? The sea that had snatched their loved ones from them, that had come with that massive tsunami out of nowhere, they weren't ready to just rebuild their villages and say, we can snap back. They were traumatised. It took much longer than 12 months, actually, for many communities to say, yes, we trust enough of life that we can build back on the coast. And that trauma means that snapback isn't always easy, and it isn't quick. The second phrase, I won't be back. Ridley has just taken Meredy and I through North and South Lismore, my first time up here since that fated 28th of February, Sunday, and through Molesworth Street and Keane Street, and it's very clear there are a number of people who've decided I won't be back. There are a lot of businesses that have decided I won't be back. There can't be any judgment on this. They look at the future and they go, for my family, for my future, for security, I won't be back. That is a very telling and also melancholy fact to live with. There are a number of people who won't be back. The next phrase that I want to work on is this idea of build back better. You know, development, international development, first came up with this phrase of build back better. When there's an earthquake, a cyclone, when there's been something that's happened because of destruction through war, we will build back better. We're not just going to restore what's there. Earthquake-resistant buildings, typhoon-resistant buildings, communities post-war where we've done the mediation and the reconciliation and the forgiveness to actually neutralise those tensions, or war breaks out again and everything gets burnt down and destroyed again and lives lost. Build Back Better started with international development. It certainly then came here to Australia. When we have a disaster of any sort, we use this crisis as also an opportunity to build back better. Well, when I thought of this happening here at the Winsome, I thought, in some ways that's mad. Mad because it's the junction of the Leicester Creek. By the way, what you call a creek here in Victoria, we call a massive river. The junction where the Leicester Creek meets the Wilson River. I think the hotel once, 97 years ago, was called the Junction Hotel. That's when Janelle Saffin started as a barmaid. In those years, the Junction Hotel was the source of hope, vitality, trade that came down the river. It supplied Lismore. All things that were necessary to survive were associated with the river and the junction. But as you know, right here, with the river, beginning on the 28th of February, was the source of destruction and havoc, and some lives lost, and people who said, I'll never be back. Why would you build back better here? Why here? Isn't it sort of mad? And yet what we're doing here today is celebrating what I think may be the metaphor, the parable for the whole of Lismore. If you can build back here at the Winsome, it's a hopeful sign for all of Lismore, isn't it? If you can build back here where the destruction almost certainly, if it comes again, will wash through here again with aluminium benches with now sweep out the water, rebuilt much better facilities. If you can build back here in the knowledge it might happen again, that is my definition of hope. That is hope personified for this city. Well, the Build Back Better here is quite extraordinary, that we're celebrating what was to be the opening today. Church starts tomorrow back here in mid to the end of November. A Build Back Better hope that sends the message to Lismore. We're back. We're not going to give up. Which takes me to the third point, no turning back. Mika, sort of in jest in the introduction I picked up, Mika said, from this day forward it sounds like a wedding, doesn't it? And maybe, Mika, you're thinking of a wedding that I had the privilege of doing, of Nat and Paul, who are here on the banks of the Nile in Uganda, Ridley's daughter Nat. When it came to the vows, I lie not, the hippopotamuses roared and drowned out their vows. Who's ever had a wedding like that? Maybe there was those flashbacks to weddings and vows. But think of those wedding vows. The vows made at a wedding are for better or for worse. No turning back. In sickness and in health. No turning back. In riches and in poverty. No turning back. The wedding vows aren't just a contract. Yeah, we sign under the Marriage Act a marriage certificate. That's the contractual side. The wedding vows are a covenant. A covenant is a sacred word to make meaning. When humans actually make deeper meaning, they're making a covenant. They're actually saying there is no turning back. We're in this. Whatever the circumstances, we're in this. Well, in refurbishing the Winston, in opening it and celebrating its opening very soon, it's our form of covenant. There's a deeper meaning for Lismore, for all of us here. No turning back. And no turning back that includes those who are the poorest and often the first abandoned and excluded, who the Winsome actually has always existed for. For that profound sense of community that just doesn't see the powerful and the rich who can build their homes up the hill, not in south and north of Lismore, but those who are here, we have a covenant to never abandon you. This no turning back is rich with meaning, with covenantal relationships. And when I say meaning, it's really at the Winsome here, not just a community of care, of erring on the side of generosity. It's a community that is a moral hub. Morality is very simply this. Morality is, it's about us, not I. We, not me. We live in a culture where it has become very individual-centred in terms of my rights and my interests and my benefits. I quoted Mika Ridley last night. Kierkegaard, a Danish writer, says, "The door to happiness turns outwards." That's a really good definition of morality. People we know who are only focused on themselves really are happy. Have you noticed that? The door to happiness turns outwards. It's morality saying, what are my duties? What do I owe to others in Lismore, to those who are poorest and most vulnerable that the Winsome exists for? It's a moral hub here. We are really celebrating the restoration of this covenantal relationship, that this place is imbued with meaning, it's imbued with hope, it's imbued with morality. This is something that is sacred this afternoon. The Winsome's nothing without the music. Whenever I've been here at church, it's just fantastic. And you know, one of my good friends in World Vision, well before he joined World Vision, was in Africa, a 24-year-old. He was out the back, standing on the back of a truck tray, bouncing along at 5 kilometres an hour. African roads had potholes big enough to swallow trucks and to swallow Land Rovers, thick bush on either side. And suddenly the truck comes to a halt. A massive tree has fallen across the road, and there's thick bush on either side. They're 2 hours from where they've come from. Sitting atop the tree is one lone African with a tomahawk, futilely chipping away at this massive tree trunk. They stop, they reverse up many times, they get out chains. They try to get the chains around the tree trunk. It's so massive, the chains won't go around it. They go, what are we going to do? They say, the only thing we can do is actually use human effort. They literally get out and put their shoulders to this tree trunk, and on 3 heave, it barely shudders. It's a dead weight. A truck coming the other way is blocked. They all get out. They're caught too. They're enlisted. On 3 they heave. It maybe moves a quarter of an inch, but it's a dead weight. It's hopeless. They're about to give up, saying we've got to go back. Someone says, one last go, let's not die wondering. My friend Dave says, at that moment, people just started emerging from the bush, Africans. You didn't know who they were, you didn't know where they'd come from. They just started coming out of the bush. They were enlisted. On 3 they heaved. This dead weight was just not moving. And then this last time, before they're about to give up, shoulders to this tree trunk, Dave remembers this frail, elderly African man who'd just come out of the bush, snuggling up next to Dave with his shoulder to the tree trunk. Dave remembers him because he looked at him and thought, fat lot of good you're going to be. A frail, elderly African man. This African man just started to sing an African song. And the Africans knew that a crescendo point was coming and it was going to be the signal. He was giving the heave. It got to that crescendo point and they all heaved. And it might have moved maybe a centimetre. They took a breather, shoulders again. This African man started to sing. Dave was ready this time. Got to the crescendo and they heaved. It moved maybe a centimetre and a half. Dave said, we sang and heaved, led by this African man, 80, 90, 100 times, until we moved this tree little bit by little bit, just enough for a truck to be able to squeeze through and go on their journey. Dave later became head of Boston Consulting. He's a brilliant guy, he's American. He said, you know, that was the most important lesson I ever learned, to be a consultant. He said the mission never changed. The mission was to move this tree. He said the strategy never changed. It couldn't be a tomahawk. It couldn't be chains. It could only be human effort. So what changed? What changed, he said, was a frail African man's song that reached into our hearts, drew out something we hadn't quite realised was there, and got us into perfect alignment as we heaved. Well, the Winsome mission has never changed, has it? This mission and the work that we have seen to do this extraordinary job of building back much better. When I walked in, I couldn't believe this was the same Winsome. This is so much better than what I remember the Winsome when I saw it last. Well, what pulled this off, as you've heard from the speeches, is really a song that's got people into alignment, that said it's not just about me, it's about us. A song full of meaning, a song full of hope, a song full of saying, no turning back. Thank you.